This is part two of a conversation we had that started last week. So if you did not hear the beginning of the conversation, take a listen to that, whether it's right now or after this, to hear David's story about how he got started and how he used his own personal transformation journey through addiction and through some other struggles to not only come out of that and be successful himself, but to take the business he was in and be able to really help it serve his community in the long run. And we're going to get into how he's been doing that. But David, welcome back into the show here. Really happy to have you today. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks again for having me, Joel. Great to be back.
Yeah. So as I was saying, we talked about kind of your journey of going from, being an addict and, kind of going through everything that's involved with that and moving through that to starting your own business that does a lot of different things, all within kind of the realm of, kind of real estate. But it sounds like the main purpose of it at this point is really to provide those jobs to people who were in the same situation you were in. It sounds like that was really the heart of the beginning of it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's how I started. I found a low barrier to entry job opportunity for myself that also let me create a business. And then, recovery teaches me that as the business grew, I should open up that same opportunity to others trying to rise up out of the abyss.
One thing I didn't get a chance to ask you in the first half here was you mentioned that to just as a human being going through a difficult time, whatever it is, whether it's addiction or it's any other issue, you mentioned just the importance of a community in that and how that informed the way you continue to approach your business. I'm curious if you could kind of expand on what you mean by that and why the community aspect you feel like is so vital to that success and why you want to invest back into it.
Yeah, again, that just starts with sobriety. One of the weirdest stories about my journey is like I learned so much about business and life in what we call the rooms.
Mm.
But I'll just focus. It all starts there. Like, we it's you learn in rehab, and then you learn as soon as you get out and start going to those meetings that the best way to stay sober is to stay connected to your sobriety community. And then the best way to really, really make sure that you stay sober within that community is to help others. And
Mm.
there's a variety of ways that we do that in a recovery community. But then there's also this message that, hey, it doesn't stop there. It's just you want to serve your community, serve your brothers and sisters in life, just in life. And then what you get out of that is A, sobriety, like so your life, you get your life back. But B, a joyful life. Like this is a good way to live. Like
Hmm.
you feel like life has meaning, you feel like you have connection, sleep well at night. Unlike some of my past careers and certainly the way that I lived life with my drinking and so on.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And so, what I wanted to really dig in with you here on, with the time that we've got on this half is to talk about this transition that you made. You started talking about it near the end of the last episode, where you talked about how you took this business you had built, where you started off just by working it, by essentially cleaning out houses that were getting foreclosed on, and some other kind of jobs like that. And then you built the business, and it was important to you to pay your people well, to have that low barrier to entry. But then there was a point at which, as the business grew, you decided it wasn't just going to be your business, that this wasn't going to just be an asset for you, it was going to be an asset for the community. Tell me a little bit about, kind of about that process.
Yeah, sure. So it starts with the fact that this sector that we work in, it has a couple of euphemistic names. One of them is property preservation, other is REO services, loss mitigation. But it's like the seedy underbelly of the American housing finance
Yeah.
system. It's figuring out what to do with foreclosures once a foreclosure happens, which is an ugly, ugly, ugly moment. Um, so it's dangerous, it's dirty, and most aggravating when you're trying to run a social enterprise where there's like programmatic support. If you make a commitment to help folks coming back from rehab or from jail or from prison or off the streets to stand back up and to work and to be part of community. There's like cost to that. There's a programmatic commitment to that. And so if you're working for clients that, first of all, don't give a crap about that mission, but also just don't pay you well to begin with, it's really difficult to support that. So we were looking for a way to do what we did, our employment socialized enterprise better. And at the same time, we were like, you're in it like every day, particularly during the recession. You see what extractive financing really looks like on a house to house, community, family to family basis, and how really, really disproportionately bad it is in neighborhoods that have already been oppressed for like generations. So we started like put it all together. Can we pay ourselves better? Can we find a way to invest in these neighborhoods that would be, mutually beneficial to our team and to the neighborhoods that we're doing a lot of work in? We started researching, like figuring out what was going on, and so started reading great books, which everybody should read, like The Color of Law or The Race for Profit or Evicted, which are just
Mm-hmm.
stunningly stark but insightful documentation of how the American housing finance system has worked in this land since the New Deal. Topic for a different day, but we really start to become aware that these neighborhoods that we are witnessing a yet another chapter of oppression, extraction, and exclusion. This is like yet another chapter that goes back generations and decades. So we come up with this thesis. Hey, if we can raise the money, can we do the work ourselves to lift up neighborhoods? And can we find a way to gentrify neighborhoods, meaning revitalize them, bring them back to their greatness and bring them back to a state of economic robustness and wealth, but keep that wealth and that equity in the community? So that was the idea that we started pitching, and it's the thing that we're doing today.
Yeah, and it sounds like there's one of the fundamental dichotomies that I'm hearing you sort of mention, or ways to think about this, is you've mentioned kind of there being, the companies that you've seen in your industry, the way that they approach their businesses. You've mentioned the word extractive a couple of times. And you have also talked about how your business, I don't know if you've used this word, but it sounds to me like what you're talking about is kind of using, instead of having an extractive model of business, is to have a more regenerative one, where the profits from the companies that's made don't get taken out and sent off to, Cayman Islands or, anything like that, but they get put back into the community that they're in. Did the shift from you privately owning your business to actually transitioning it to a shared ownership model, did that how did that affect that, where you were at on that extractive versus regenerative scale, I guess?
From our own business perspective, we were an employment social enterprise all along. But what that meant before the conversion was just that I went into a ton of personal debt to try to try to keep this thing moving. And now we've transferred ourselves from a place of that kind of awful scarcity to a place of regeneration. That's a great word, like a very regenerative. I think the point I would focus on is, I don't think we have time for it, but like I could rattle off 7 or 8 different ways that we think of corporations or capitalism or even the government extract from a neighborhood. Maybe the shortest way to talk about it is let's just go with flipping. We'll leave
Mm-hmm.
predatory lending aside. We'll leave redlining for another day, but just
Leave
flipping it in
private equity buying homes just to rent out, so that home ownership keeps going down and down. We can leave out that for now too.
And that's what's going on today. Like, we're
Yeah.
competing in neighborhoods now that nobody cared about, and all of a sudden there's people at the auction blocks, and it's private equity funded um, investors, and they're not even grabbing properties for rentals in these neighborhoods. It's pure speculation. They're just like buying these neighborhoods and letting them sit vacant, like the same kind of shit, you
Yeah,
know?
just holding on to them.
Um, yeah, and so like I'll lose at an auction to a private equity funded investor on a property that's right next to one that we're working on, and that's like a continued like drag blight on us, and they are purely speculating. They are not going to do anything on it until the numbers are right that they can sell off to somebody who will. Ah, um, but anyway, yeah, I mean, we could leave it at that. But even flipping is an industry that has these characters in it that are called bird dogs who put out bandit signs. We pay cash for money and we
Oh
pay
yeah.
cash for houses. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, Hard money lenders, and then ultimately the flippers. Each one of those characters is taking a cut, um, is and it starts with the bird dog finding somebody who has a deed in a very poor neighborhood and is under financial distress. So they part with that deed at a ridiculously low price, and then the bird dog assigns that contract to a flipper. So he might have bought the house for $10,000 and then he assigns it to a flipper for $20,000 or 30. So what just happened right there, like 10 or $20,000 of equity got ripped right out of that community. And then the flipper will use these hard money, high interest loans to make the renovation happen. So again, that high interest and those fees, another form of extraction that gets ripped out and incentivizes, pressures the flipper to do shitty work. And then finally, the flipper is going to flip it and try to get his cut. So I have a slide that shows, that represents about after the house is finished, 60% of the wealth that was created from that renovation just gets ripped right out of the community.
Man.
So,
So when you're thinking about the way that you guys can do your part at least to help address that issue, why did that shift to a co-op model? How did that serve that end goal?
yeah, so there's two pivotal pieces here. One is our model is dependent upon us being able to raise impact investment. So rates that look much better than the hard money lenders that are patient and
Mm-hmm.
long-term thinking, and a shared equity a model. So Seed Commons is a CDFI that supports co-op conversions. They weren't really into like mortgages for residential housing, but they took a chance and they experimented with us and iterated their financing with us over the last 3 or 4 years. So we've gotten to this really pretty amazing product now. But the short of it is, it's a 3% 30-year line of credit that allows us to renovate up to somewhere between 90 and 110% LTV. I know I'm getting a little technical here, but that's very patient, very impactful, very powerful money. And then the other piece of it is if now the workers are the investors, are the developers,
Mm-hmm.
um, we're not looking like to yank that money out of the community. We're just looking to pay ourselves better, market wages, middle class wages, and to train ourselves better. And then once this portfolio stabilizes and turns into performance and positive value, to distribute those dividends and that equity to the workers and to the tenants that move in. So you see a neighborhood getting lifted up, but
Mm-hmm.
unlike the previous models where it's just getting ripped apart and waiting for, the affluent to move in and just push whoever's left out. We're like keeping everybody in, everybody stays, and everybody gets to enjoy the wealth that they've built and that they deserve.
What's been the biggest like surprise to you in all of this recently?
Well, one surprise we already talked about is when we started all this, we were highly, highly distressed, historically redlined, just like crumbling neighborhoods full of vacants, just like uh, if you've driven through West Baltimore, you know what this looks like. And no, like there's no competition. Nobody cared about these neighborhoods, but now we are competing against a new form of, private equity. That's kind of the bad surprising. I think the good surprising is, um, we're still very early stages, but just like how good it feels and how well it's proving out. Uh, we have like really great measurement tools. We have built really great financial tools and impact tools. So we're carefully measuring what's going on. And you can see us increasing productivity. So we're improving the way that we fully renovate properties and at the same time bringing our budgets down just because we're getting better at it and more efficient and building better tools for project management. And that in turn is converting into better wages for our workers. So maybe I'll just leave it at that one. There's like so many examples I could give you
Hmm.
of where I just on a given day I'll be like, wow, that is beautiful as balls, man. A thing that's happened. But this one, which I think is a core tenet of cooperative principles or arguments, that you would convert worker productivity into better wages for workers is like totally, absolutely, and visibly proving out much faster than I expected.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense to me. There have been companies, or I've worked both on nonprofits and on the business side, and there have been companies and groups where you could tell that they wanted to give you more ownership, more stake in what they were doing. And I've also had examples where they didn't really want, you were just kind of a paid employee, and you were replaceable, and they were basically just renting you every day. And the places where I know that I've been given ownership stake, or I've been given where it's clear that the ownership is interested in investing back into its people, at least, is I know for me personally, I always experience more commitment to my work, more diligence in making sure I'm doing good work and working hard and all those things that typically, we are good for productivity. They're good for profits. They're good for all of that. I'm curious if you have seen that play out in this, a new experiment in a way that you're doing.
Yeah, so at first, like everybody's like stunned and doesn't know what to make of it when you not make the announcement. We're a cooperative now, and it's yours, and you've got to show up for committees and become a member and vote and debate and discuss. Everybody's like a little like what the but now it's really taking. Our cooperative governance is really strong. We're adopting a new operating agreement, for example, so a new constitution, and we've had this great, well participated work group, study group to, read the new document the lawyers have written for us and to, improve upon it and discuss it. Um, so, so this thing that was kind of weird to everybody at first is now turning into like real worker democracy, which is
Mm-hmm.
amazing to watch. But to your point about how does it affect worker productivity, I think that took a minute too because people are um, often just used to the boss worker situation. So they,
Right.
dynamic. So they come to the work sites and just expect to stand around and be told what to do. And one piece of our grand experiment is that we are pushing decisions out to the front line as far as possible. So frontline worker autonomy is a big part of our experiment, and we're building these project systems that do that, that send out bite-sized chunks of the renovation project to small groups, to individuals who are out there, and they are responsible for their budgets and their deadlines and their scope of work and the quality of work. And that took a minute also for people to like jam on that, but now they're getting it because the other thing that we do is we agree upon a budget, and if they hit it or come in below, they get to keep the difference, right? So this it's like
Mm-hmm.
everything that we're talking about, pushing the autonomy out there, and so the benefits of that, that well run, that interest in your own work is not just like morale and feel good stuff. It's real money, which it should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I know for me, when I know that there's some kind of that my work actually is going to have an impact on, like if I help my company make more money, it's also going to have a positive impact on me, and I'm going to get some of that money. It makes sense that there's a more of a unified end goal. It kind of puts everyone on the same page in that way, which I think is kind of neat. It does. I do feel like there's what I like about your work is you're sort of questioning assumptions and sort of busting myths, not necessarily by talking about it, but just by doing it. And some of those myths are that if you're going to go into business, it has to all be about yourself and all about your profit. And it also, I think, is busting the myth that you mentioned before. You guys are a for-profit co-op. a lot of times when people hear the word co-op, they think, oh, they don't make money, or there's no profit to be had there. Have you run into that misconception?
It's funny. I testified for a co-op law bill in front of the Maryland General Assembly a couple of weeks ago, and there was this bill just created a co-op structure in the state of Maryland, like there are in 30 other states. Sailed through the Senate, unanimous approval through the Senate. But when we got to this House Economics Matters Committee, we testified, and then the legislators started to ask their questions and voice their concerns and support. Of course, there was one legislator, not going to get into the politics of which party he might be or from what part of the state, but he started like expressing fears that this was communism, right? Like this was state planning. And he got roundly chastised by the chairman for that. But the point, yes, like people still have this idea. And you know what else is interesting? We have a lot of Latinos in our group,
Mm.
and it takes a minute for some of the folks who've come from like Venezuela to understand that this is not, centralized planning. This is capitalism. We've just changed who the shareholders are. That is it. Like that's it. We are competing on the playing field of capitalism. And our thesis is like, if you really want to win, that's what you got to do. You just got to get out there and you've just got to change who the shareholders are, make the workers the owner of their own work, not in the socialist or communist Marxist kind of way, but by making them shareholders of a corporation that is out there competing against other corporations. And then the thing that I think is an experiment I haven't heard too much about before is this profit sharing model that we have, which is like micro profit sharing, like small jobs that get pushed all the way out to the front. The idea here is like distributed profits, like profits get in the pockets of the workers
Right.
long before they accumulate at the top of the corporation. And then there's got to be some kind of dividend distributed, right? This is not communism. They worked for that. They wrote the work order with us and they executed on it in a way that will create a business that works. But down at that level, they get to enjoy whatever efficiencies or profit they considered they created within this capitalist playing field,
Yeah.
gridiron.
Well, yeah. I mean, we like democracy, and so we should like
Yeah,
democracy in business. Is just kind of the way I see it. But
yeah,
thank you so much for your time
yes.
today, David. We do have to run. For all of you out there, check out where can they find you?
Pretty much LinkedIn and Instagram. If you go to LinkedIn, there's a page for each one of our entities. There's me, David Lids. There's Water Bottle Co-op, Rising Housing, and Appalachian Field Services. And
Awesome.
similarly, on Instagram, you can find all those entities.
Great. And we'll put those links in the show notes. Tune in next time and listen on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, all of the places you get your podcast, YouTube. And until next time, remember, we are each other. Hey, y'all, thanks for watching. I just wanted to quickly inform you about my financial services agency, which operates in the life insurance space. So we help families with debt elimination plans and create tax-favored retirement solutions. We support small businesses, nonprofits, worker-owned co-ops, unions, and social enterprises with employee and member benefits. We offer white glove insurtech services to community banks, credit unions, financial co-ops, and CDFIs. And we provide enduring acceleration and downside capture strategies for all kinds of investors. Check out the link in the video description and enjoy the show.